Hello, and welcome back to Miss Bell's classroom. Today in class we're going to continue the nutrition series. What I'll be talking about today is the energy system, so macronutrients like fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and then the micronutrients like vitamins, minerals, water, and fiber. So I'll be talking a little bit more in detail about each of those. So if you have any questions, just let me know. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about the macronutrients. So the macronutrients are lipids, which are just a fat, and then carbs, carbohydrates, and protein. So we'll be talking about each one of these to start, and then we'll talk about the micronutrients as well. So the first one we're going to talk about are lipids and fat. So lipids are an essential part of the diet and every cell in the body. They provide a concentrated source of energy for the body and assist in the transmission of the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. And they are also there to help the intestine for digestion. Cholesterol is an essential ingredient for both male and females, the female hormones and the male hormones, and also has an important function in healing processes and cell building. Other fats, such as essential fatty acids and are fundamental to brain and nerve function as well. So your body does need lipids and fats. They're going to help with the transport of energy. It's going to help with the hormones in your body and your brain and nerve function as well. So you do need them, and you need to make sure you're getting enough. Most people think that this class of the macromolecule are just one type of lipid, but there's many. There's oils, phospholipids, and steroids. They're a very diverse group, and they differ depending on the temperature that they're at. So that's a little overview of lipids and fats. The next macronutrient that we're going to talk about are carbohydrates. So in general, carbohydrates should form the basis of every meal and snack because glycogen stores in the muscles and provide the energy for performance. So muscle glycogen and blood glucose are the fuel used for energy for short duration. Intense and anaerobic activities. So after all of the stored glycogen and blood glucose have been burnt as fuel during anaerobic activity, fats become the secondary fuel source. So you need carbohydrates when you're doing aerobic and anaerobic activities, and that's going to be the main energy source for your body. The next one we're going to talk about today is protein, and I spelled that wrong, sorry. So proteins are made of various combinations of more than 20 amino acids. 10 of these amino acids are called essential amino acids because they cannot be manufactured by the body and must be supplied by the diet. The major function of amino acids is to make the repair cells of the body, And the body breaks down food, amino acids, and then makes its own protein. So another function of protein is to provide energy in extreme conditions such as starvation. So we talked about lipids, carbohydrates, and protein, a little overview of them. Now we're going to talk about the micronutrients. So the micronutrients include vitamins, also minerals, water, and fiber. So vitamins, this is the first one we're going to talk about. So vitamins are required for health and for optimal performance at competitions and training. Deficiencies can lead to early fatigue, infections, illness, and slow recovery time from an injury. Vitamins are compounds that are required in small quantities for normal growth, development, and metabolism. They act as coenzymes to assist the enzymes that catalyze the breakdown of carbs, proteins, fats, and minerals. They are divided into two distinct categories. So there's water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble vitamins. So the fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. They are usually stored in the body, and if you get a very high level of them, they can be toxic because they're stored in the body, they don't get flushed out. Whereas the water-soluble vitamins are the vitamin Bs and vitamin C. These must be supplied regularly because the body flushes them out and they dissolve in water and they're easily expelled from the body. So you want to make sure that you're getting those daily, but the fat-soluble ones can be stored in your body. Another thing about vitamins, the main vitamins needed for athletes are vitamin C and the B vitamins. Vitamin C is needed for resistance to infection and for stress management. B vitamins are required for energy metabolism and release. So we talked about vitamins. Now we're going to talk about minerals. So minerals include calcium, potassium, iron, sodium, phosphorus, and chlorine. All of these are important in the cellular functions, such as muscle contraction, fluid balance, and energy systems. So deficiencies in minerals can sometimes impede your performance in daily life or athletic performance. So, for example, some female athletes might need more iron supplements during heavy training. Okay, the next category we're going to talk about is water. So water is the main component of cells, sweat, blood, and makes up about 2/3 of the total body weight. So water is used for transport and for cooling. When fluid is lost, cells can become dehydrated and their functions are impaired. So cells cannot build tissue or utilize energy efficiently. Toxins can accumulate in the blood. Sweating does not occur and the body temperature also will rise. So blood volume decreases and there's less blood to transport oxygen and nutrients. So you need water. And then the last one we're going to talk about today is fiber. So fiber is the part of the plant that cannot be digested by the body. So moderate amounts of fiber can help with a slower rise in glucose level, a lower insulin requirement, normal functions of the body, lower cholesterol levels. So all of these are the micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, water, and fiber. So next we're going to talk about glucose and kind of discuss what is the glucose molecule and why is it important in our body. So glucose is an example of a carbohydrate which is commonly encountered. It's also known as the blood sugar and dextrose. So many of the most important carbohydrates are more complex disaccharides and polysaccharides rather than the simpler monosaccharides. So there's simple and complex carbohydrates. The simple ones are more of the monosaccharides, whereas the complex ones are called disaccharide and polysaccharides. So disaccharides the first one we're going to talk, and this is a type of carbohydrate. So when two monosaccharide molecules react or condense with each other, losing a water molecule in the process, the product is a disaccharide. So several disaccharides are common in nature, the most well-known being sucrose. Sucrose is also called cane sugar, beet sugar, table sugar, and dextrose. So sucrose is a disaccharide of glucose and fructose. So this is kind of like your common table sugar, cane sugar. Dextrose is another name for it. There's lots of names for sugar. Glucose, fructose as well. So disaccharides will react with water, especially in the presence of enzymes such as those by honeybees to form invert sugar. It's a mixture of the two monosaccharides and responsible for the sweet taste of honey. So monosaccharides can undergo a series of condensation reactions, adding one unit after another to the chain until very large molecules, polysaccharides, are formed. This is called condensation, polymerization, and the building blocks are called monomers. So we know that disaccharides are when two monosaccharides are together and they lose a water molecule. The next one we're going to talk about are poly. So polysaccharides are when you have kind of a chain or very large molecules put together. So multiple, adding one after another and another, you're going to get a polysaccharide. So many. So a polysaccharide is a polymer of one of the monosaccharides. All of the well-known polysaccharides found in nature are polymers of glucose. Several familiar materials are polymers of glucose. So starch, which is kind of a poly material, poly-alpha glucose, cellulose, which is poly-beta glucose, and glycogen, which is a differently branched form of a poly-alpha glucose. Cellulose is used to form plant structures since it is not soluble in water. While plants use starch for energy storage, animals store energy as glycogen, or for longer term storage, convert glycogen and other carbohydrates into lipids. So that is about polysaccharides. The next type of energy system that we're going to talk about is saturated and unsaturated fats. So saturated fats have no double bonds between their carbon atoms and tend to be solid at room temperature, whereas unsaturated fats, one or more double bonds, are liquid at room temperature and therefore considered oils. So a little bit more about saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. So a fatty acid is a acid which is either saturated or unsaturated. So most of the natural fatty acids have an even number of carbon atoms because their biosynthesis involves acetyl-CoA, a coenzyme carrying a 2-carbon atom group. So saturated fatty acids, the term saturated refers to hydrogen in that all carbons contain as many hydrogens as possible. Saturated fatty acids form straight chains and as a result can be packed together very tightly, allowing living organisms to store energy very densely. So foods that contain a high proportion of saturated fat include butter, coconut oil, dairy products. Diets high in saturated fats are correlated with an increased incidence of coronary heart disease. Unsaturated fatty acids, so we talked about saturated, and then now we're going to talk about unsaturated fatty acids. So in cellular metabolism, hydrogen-carbon bonds are broken down or oxidized to produce energy. Thus, an unsaturated fat molecule contains somewhat less energy than a comparable size saturated fat. So foods containing unsaturated fats include avocados, nuts, vegetable oils such as soy, bean, canola, and olive oils. Although unsaturated fats are healthier than saturated, their consumption should still be limited. So now we're going to talk about proteins. So proteins are the most complex and functional diverse of molecules of living organisms. They compose enzymes, blood, and muscle tissues, just to name a few, and therefore are associated with meat products. So amino acids are the chemical units or building blocks that make up protein. Every living organism is composed of a protein, and it is vital in the chemical processes that sustain life. In addition to combining to form the body's proteins, some amino acids act as neurotransmitters or precursors of transmitters, the chemicals that carry information from one nerve cell to another. So thinking about essential and non-essential amino acids. So we have essential, which are the amino acids that we get from food, and then non-essential. Essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. So there are approximately 28 commonly known amino acids that are combined in various ways to create 150 or more other intermediates inside the body, as well as more than 40,000 proteins known so far to science. So the essential amino acids are those that the body cannot synthesize in sufficient quantities to satisfy the nutritional requirements for good health, and that they must be included in the diet. So these we have to get from our diet. So some sources of this might be meat, fish, eggs, and some dairy products. So non-essential amino acids are ones that you can get in the diet. So meat, milk, fish, poultry, beans. The body can use them in place of 2 essential amino acids. So you don't need these, your body can create them, but these ones you have to get from your diet. Another thing is there are different recommendations for healthy, balanced diets. So different, countries have different things that they recommend, like the Mediterranean diet, Indian, Japanese. So every culture has different diets, and that influences their food selection and preparation, and that varies for every population. So in the United States, we have, the My Plate, and they recommend different types of food for that. So thinking about, the recommended energy distribution of the dietary macronutrients differs between endurance athletes and non-athletes. So the quality of the athlete's diet is assessed primarily in terms of carbs, proteins, and fats, so the macronutrients. So micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals are essential but do not provide energy. Sedentary people should consume a diet that has approximately 55 to 60% carbohydrates, no more than 30% fat, and 10 to 15% protein, whereas an endurance athlete should have about 60 to 70% carbohydrates, and then they should be at the expense of the fat that they're taking. So they're going to need more carbs, less fat, protein's about the same. Athletes who train heavily on successive days, such as endurance runners and swimmers, must be aware of the need for carbohydrate replenishment to avoid feeling kind of flat. So while replenishing the liver glycogen is reasonably rapid, muscle glycogen stores take about 24 hours to restore. So that is just a little lesson on the energy systems and how our body uses macronutrients and micronutrients. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson.